Good afternoon. We are going to call the regular meeting of the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority to order on May 13th, 2024. For the record, on our Oregon commissioners, Commissioner Fox is absent, Commissioner Babbitts is absent. Commissioner Polson is present, Commissioner alternate Thomas is absent, alternate DeVol is absent, and alternate Edwards is present. So we have Commissioners Polson and Edwards are voting.
Thomas is here.
Thomas is there as well. So we have 3 voting members from Oregon. Thank you, Catherine. On the Washington side, Commissioner Anderson is present, Commissioner Keithler is absent, Commissioner Gibson is present, alternate Gilchrist is absent, alternate Wilson is sitting in for Commissioner Keithler, and alternate Berger is present but unable to vote. With that, are there any changes to the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Approval and correction of the minutes for the regular board meeting of April 22nd, 2024.
Move the minutes be accepted as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for the minutes of April 22nd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. We have the minutes of the special session meeting, April 26th, 2024.
Move we approve minutes from April 26th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from April 26th. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 One more. We have the minutes from the special session meeting, May 2nd, 2024.
I move that we,
Wondering if you guys realize that.
Yeah, yep.
May 2nd meetings.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried.
Other people opportunities to jump in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
get practice.
We will now move into public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone online or in the room who would like to provide public comment? Raise your hand, unmute yourself, turn your video on, *6 if you're on your phone. I am not seeing anyone who is a member of the public. Okay, last chance. Would anyone like to provide public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment for the day. All right, we will move into the executive reports. We will move with the project director bridge update report.
All right, thanks, Jake. I did add a first section in here on the progressive design build, so we'll start reporting just kind of very high level on that of what upcoming deliverables are coming in. There will be during your other committee meetings, we'll get into more details, but if there's any questions on that, we can cover them here, and then we will put any decisions in the action items as they come out of the task force meetings. So they're progressing what we're calling now value engineering assessment or alternative assessment. We've refined the words on that just a little bit because alternative assessment means something when you talk about NEPA. So this is more, we're not really looking at alternatives. We're not getting outside of the general idea of what we're doing for the bridge. So we're more terming that a value engineering assessment. Just so people are aware of the terminology change. They're also progressing the data collection and validation of the existing conditions. They've set up project task force meetings. So we have a kind of a higher level project progress meeting that happens on Mondays, on the first and third Mondays. And then we go through the disciplines on Tuesday. We try to get all the project level meetings done on that Monday and Tuesday. And those fall in between your bridge authority meetings so that we can bring action items to you the following week if there's something that the authority needs to make a decision on. So we've set those up purposely kind of to do that. April deliverables were the interim baseline schedule that has been submitted, the estimating methodology, and the PDB's risk register items have been submitted. We're consolidating all the risk register items into a single risk register, which is on the SharePoint database, where you'll be able to get to that. We've got one person now identified as the owner of the risk register. And they will be consolidating all risk items and developing the reports that we have kind of a single language on it. And it's, if you have more than one person, it gets a little messy with how it's written up and the language used. So we've got those things. And then in May, we've just got some overview plans coming, the scope management plan, which is similar to a decision log or issues log, where we'll be tracking decisions that are made during phase 1A. Those will then become the basis when we go into 1B and 2 for change management. So they'll be developing that plan, which just kind of walks through how we're going to capture those. We've got the log already developed and the workflow for how to enter information into that. So we'll start to implement that. The design quality management plan, the OPC, which is their baseline OPC. OPC is of opinion of probable cost, which is them taking the PCE that we currently have up project cost estimate and basically converting that over into the format that we will use for the rest of the project. So aligning task items or work breakdown structure items so that we can compare apples to apples as they develop their costs and we validate those costs. So that'll be coming in May. And then just doc control plan. We're getting organized around that of where we're going to submit documents, how we're going to submit things, what type of software and submittal processes we'll be tracking submittals. So just kind of getting the project up and running, getting the background stuff set up. So that's May. Communications will be given an update when we get to that part. Legislative activities, we do have to do procurement services before July 1st. So Tahiti is working through that. It's a little different for us than it was for the port because the project is federalized. So we do have to do an outreach. Tahiti, I don't know if you want to spend just a second updating them on that procurement process for the lobbyists. You're on mute.
Sure, I can spend a few minutes. We have identified a few potential lobbyists who can compete to get a renewal or second round of the lobbyist contracts. So we are reaching out to them and request their proposal to comply with the procurement rule to have some competitive procurement going on. So hopefully we can present it to the board in June to be able to execute the second round of the lobbyist contracts for 2024, 2025 in June.
So if obviously the three that we currently have all indicated they will be resubmitting, but we also will be reaching out to some others. So, but again, we got to follow our procurement rules and processes. So, Oregon, we're working on the Joint Transportation Committee project tour. So there'll be some additional information coming out about that. We're trying to get a stop here. They're meeting in the Dalles, and we're trying to work out having them stop here at the project as they pass through. If they can't, then we may have to go up to the Dalles to do some type of presentation there. The tour focus is around maintenance. So we're trying to make sure how ours ties into the reasoning they're traveling. So we're still working on that with the Oregon lobbyists, and we'll provide you some additional information as that comes together. On the Oregon funding, we have submitted an application on the Oregon Infrastructure Bank. We will be reaching out this week to follow up with them. They have it. They're reviewing the application. The Washington funding, we should see this month the revision to the agreement with WashDOT to revise it from 5 million to 15 million. And then we had a really good call with Hood River County. We've gotten some terms from them. We've provided some responses and comments back. I would anticipate next month we will bring that back to the board for your all's approval. We've been working with the finance committee and legal on that. And, once it gets a little more refined, we'll bring that back to the board, for discussion.
That's interim. Financing or interim funding.
I mean, it would be funding kind of an if needed funding, I would call it. It will be a loan, so it will be at an interest rate.
Yeah.
And those are the terms we're working out with them right now and what we'll bring back to you once we get that refined.
Another way to mitigate that. Or
The cash flow.
issue.
Correct.
Okay.
The BIP, we have not heard. The last update was we will hear in June. So we will let you know, as soon as we hear something there. The raise grants, infra grant are all still in review with FHWA. My guess is that a lot of that's been slowed down with the Baltimore stuff. So I think they've been pretty focused on that. So hopefully we'll hear something back from them soon on finalizing those agreements. We did, however, and it's in your packet, get approval for the Form 117K, which allows us to use local funds as match for infra before we finalize the infra agreement. Some of that money will be used to do some of the port right away. We have talked to the port, and I will follow up again with Kevin. We want to be very cautious in moving forward with that we're checking all the federal boxes as we do. So we'll be following up with some of that information. Treaty tribe MOAs, we continue to work with all 4 of the treaty tribes. We met with Yakima, Warm Springs, and Umatilla last week. I'll open it up, Catherine or Jake, if you've got anything that you would want to share with the group from those 3 meetings.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. I felt as though we represented the bridge really well. I think that was something that we did really well, and I look forward to hearing back from the various tribal councils and the attorneys as to what their wants are to move the process forward. I am concerned that the NEPA process is out of our control at this point with the MOU specifically, and I just would like, I wish it could be done more time efficiently, and it seems as though we are finally making some headway forward. I don't know if Jake, you feel different.
I think this has been a long process. It feels like we're making progress. We had a good chat with the legal counsel for the Yakimas after the meeting. I thought Catherine did an amazing job with the tribal council itself. She presented one of our plaques to the chair, and we can continue to hope that we move forward on this. I missed the meeting with the Warm Springs, so if Micah can give an update on that.
All right, thank you. Back to Umatilla real quick. We do have we have given them a response to their initial response for the mitigation. We've provided a response back. We're waiting for them to provide feedback. That is the MOA that is farthest along, and potentially could be coming to the board for resolution. We did hear from a number of the other ones that once we get one done, there's a high likelihood that the other ones will come a little quicker. So we're hopeful that Umatilla, we can get through that with them, and that'll be our initial one, and then the others maybe will come together a little quicker. So on Warm Springs, we did have a good conversation virtually with them. We are going to be setting up recurring meetings with them as well as Yakima. So that'll put us in a routine of recurring meetings with all 3 of the 4 tribes. The Nez Perce are meeting on a recurring basis with legal. They are talking about the need to bring in staff to have some discussions around the specifics. That one's probably the least farthest along. But that's where we are on those 4. BNSF, you will see something in your packet on that. We will be taking, they sent us an agreement. Legal made some comments. They rejected all of our comments. Surprise. So we will take that to the engineering committee and see how they would like to get their feedback, and then we'll bring that back to the board on how we want to move forward. But just initially they said no thanks, and we'll see where that goes moving forward. So, And that was it. All right, that was it, Jake.
Thank you, sir. I would like to, for the record, mention that Commissioner Babbitts is now present as well as alternate DeVol. So that now sets up Commissioner Babbitts, Commissioner Polson, and alternate Thomas for voting as we move down. Let's move into our legal report.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening. This is Jamie Pochek from Dakota's firm. Everything is pretty much status quo as far as what we've been reporting in writing. I do have a couple updates, and Mark will be on later, but he just was unable to make the beginning of the meeting. But Foster Garvey has received a contract from CDM, and they are working on turning that around, and that should be circulated shortly. And then, as was reported to by the project manager, they're working on applying for the line of credit from Hood River County. And that's the only additional two updates in addition to what's been reported on in writing as consistent.
Are there any questions for legal? Hearing none, we'll move into the lobbyist report. I see, is that Brad online?
Yep, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I apologize. I am on the road with meetings today. So we are currently, for those who aren't aware, there's been some shakeup in the legislative districts over in our area. We used to be in what was called the 14th legislative district. We have now been redistricted into the 17th legislative district. I don't think that that's going to create huge problems, other than we are in the process right now and have been over the last couple weeks of connecting with our new district and the new legislators in that district. We will be also maintaining close relationships with our old 14th legislative district also. For those who are aware, Senator King, who's been a huge supporter of this project, is in the 14th legislative district. We did meet with him. He intends on continuing to run for that 14th legislative district, and he made crystal clear to us that this continues to be certainly one of, if not his highest priority, even though we're no longer in his district. We've had good meetings again with the 17th legislative district folks as well. All of that is going to, continue. We will also be doing some outreach to candidates as we head into this election cycle, just to brief folks on this project so everyone's aware. We've also begun to work with broader stakeholders. As I've mentioned in the past, as we try and move from the 75 million that we've already gotten from Washington State and increase that, any increases are going to be tied to a bigger transportation package, which we are starting to see some efforts building around working on something like that. We're going to be doing the outreach to both different stakeholders as well as a broader group of legislators, articulating the importance of this project and making sure that we stay as a priority if or when they do an additional transportation package, so that we're positioned to try and get to that 125 million from Washington State. The only other thing, we are working to try and finalize some sort of legislative and stakeholder update meeting for the fall. Ideally, maybe there's a way to bring that September meeting that was mentioned earlier together into something, but we're still in the process of trying to pull date and timing and art of the possible together. But more details will come on that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if there's, Michael, if there's anything current in regards to WashDOT and trying to navigate their sort of, capital deployment process that we need to engage in at this point.
Nothing right now, Brad. I think everything is moving forward with the 15 million.
Okay.
So that gets us through right now, and then we'll just have to engage, as you know, on the 2025 legislative session. And I
Commissioner
did
Babbitt.
share your report that you sent out earlier today with the board member.
Okay, great. Happy to answer any questions that folks may have. Again, there is going to be quite a bit of activity going on over the next few months leading into session.
Commissioner Babbitt.
Yeah, so the actual redistricting, does that happen effective January 1st or have districts already taken effect?
So that's a good question. So for some of the districts who are on this cycle for this current election in November, those districts are now in place. So in this case, all of our legislators are up for election in the 17th legislative district this November.
Okay, and so we met with Senator Wilson, and it sounded from that discussion like she's not running for
He
re-election. Is
is
that
not.
correct?
He is
Okay, and
not. But we also met with Representative Paul Harris, if you remember. I don't know if you were on that meeting or
I
not.
missed that one. Yep.
So Representative Harris is also running for that Senate seat, as well as he's a current House member. There are other candidates who are going to be running. I'm sure we'll be talking. At least one is very familiar with this group, and we will be having, those ongoing conversations. The good news is that I do want to also say is that universally we are getting really, really, really positive feedback from everybody that we are talking to. The really collaborative process and the bi-state nature is by all means a huge selling point that everyone is really, really appreciating for obvious reasons.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much for the update, Brad. Let's move to our federal. Mr. Cole.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity again. Michael reported the bridge improvement grants have gone up to the Office of the Secretary. So they're in what is the final review process. So we'll have to see what's happening there. As he said, we're not expecting to hear the results of that. The winners of that being announced until June. So, we're kind of in a holding pattern there. Also monitoring what's happening with the Federal Highway Administration with the earmarks, congressional project or the community project funding that was included in the FY 2024 appropriations bill. Those projects usually lag about 2.5 to 3 months behind the enactment of the appropriations bill. So we're in that window now. Just kind of, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but that money will flow through the state DOTs. And they get separate codes, federal codes, so that they can track, and that money can only be used for the specific purposes that were included in the project request. So we're hoping that money will flow to the state DOTs, within the next month or so. That's about all that's happening on our end. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Do we have anyone from our Oregon lobbying firm?
Katie's not on. Jake, I can give you a little bit of an update. She's been working with our GR staff on the upcoming transportation tour and trying to make sure that they make it here to the project. So that's been a heavy activity over the last couple of weeks, is to try to get positioned to be able to do that.
I'm getting emails about that. All right, partner updates. Do we have any partner updates, either Federal Highways, ODOT, WatchDOT, or any other stakeholders? Raise your hand, turn your video on, get our attention. I'm not seeing any. Okay, now we will close out partner updates. Consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Right. Next, we'll move into funding and finance report. Grant.
Hey, everybody. A lot of the stuff we talked about prior with going through terms with securing a line from the county, waiting on hearing back from the Oregon Infrastructure Bank. So those two debt instruments are pending. The other thing that is in your packet was one of the things we were tasked with doing was a high-level poll policy in order to move along our process to certificate funding. And there are things we had to get done just to move that process along. So that is included on later on page whatever that is. So that's there. And later on, if there's any questions about it, we would like to move that forward and we move forward with that as the high level, not detail, but high level polling policy.
It's under new business.
Yeah, that'll be there in new business. We have another meeting, our regular meeting, this week on Thursday. We're going to go through the PC, update it with the assumed new sources, assumed timelines, the changes to Washington funding, and a few other things. So after that meeting, you could expect an updated PCE shortly thereafter.
Did we get updated estimates from the contractor for phase one?
No, we won't see those probably for a little while still as they work through the alternatives and work that out. What they're doing right now is taking the other PCE and reformatting it so it's in the right format, so that they have it in the right buckets, because the original wasn't really set up for progressive. It was set up for more bid build, design build. So they're just converting that over to line up with the way they're going to build the project and estimate the project.
Apples to apples.
Yeah.
Always easier.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, everything.
Any questions for funding and finance? Not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Okay, we'll move on to engineering and construction update. Mr. Wilson and Ms. Thomas.
You want to talk, Catherine?
Sure, I can begin, and then thank you everyone. And then Nate, if you could take over, I'm gonna have to step off the meeting. So I'll need you to step in. Thank you. I picked up the last agenda from our meeting last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess. And we spent a lot of time talking about the different how we're gonna make salmon safe possible, and also the designing that went around it. So our agenda is pretty lengthy, and if anybody was wondering, and we really as a group, we have quite a interesting breadth of decisions that we're, kind of talking about, and how we are going to establish that workflow and best relate it back to the board. So that's sort of what we're sort of working through right now. And Mike Shannon, please step in if you have anything to add with that. We also are talking about how we're going to set up the 3-week schedule and how we're going to review the schedule and how we're going to report that as well. So really working with our spokespeople at HNTB and then the Kiewit folks to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then we also talked about reviewing the scope and the design and how we can move forward to best ensure that what we expect people to be doing is being accomplished, and how can we ensure that the contracts reflect as such. So we really have been talking about a lot of different topics, if you will. And then I'll let Eric talk because he's head of the Bridge Aesthetics Committee, but I don't know if there's any questions based on that very high level overview of our meetings.
If nobody has any questions, I'll just jump in. And I think what Catherine is kind of outlining is it's really appreciative to watch HNTB and Kiewit kind of lay out a lot of the background and systems that we're going to need as we get into the more hands-on. So it's not really always very exciting, but knowing that it's happening so that when we're running fast and furious is it's okay.
We'll try to make it more exciting.
So bridge aesthetics, I'll just roll right into that. And Jess is going to kind of go through the big thing that we had was our major public outreach. Not only the open house for the community, but we also did an online survey that was mimicked the survey that people took at the open house. And we managed to get about 700 responses for that. And Jess and her crew have been doggedly going through all those comments and recording them. I think what you said there were over 4,000 comments if you kind of parse them all out. I think the really good thing is kind of the major themes that had emerged from our early discussions were uniformly reinforced, I think, in terms of the three main themes. What we are starting to see on the data are some conflicting desires from some of the community. People want to have windscreens that are transparent, and people don't want to have transparent things that are going to get damaged and look old. So that will be kind of the focus of our upcoming meeting on Wednesday. Jess, do you want to go through and kind of do I think you were going to go through our takeaways.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I think we're pulling up the presentation right now. Is that right?
Actually, we have that at the end. If we can wait, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
that's all right. We'll get through everything else and then we'll do the presentation at the end.
That sounds great.
The remaining part of the meeting will be just the presentation. That's okay.
Yeah. So just to finish up with aesthetics, we have our committee meeting on Wednesday where we'll sort through the results from the survey. And then on Friday, we have a Spanish language outreach event over in Hood River as well. So to engage another element of the community.
We're trying to get you people.
And hear what everybody has to say. So that's it, I think, from engineering and construction. Did we get it?
Any questions for engineering and construction? Not seeing any. We'll move on to governance, administration, and operations. Commissioner Babbitts.
Sorry, having trouble finding the mute. Actually, I think that would be Commissioner Anderson because you chaired the meeting in my absence.
We had a super short meeting, and I believe we have an issue with our Wednesday 5/22. We need to change that next meeting because that's our partnering meeting, and I think we're all going to be there.
That's
So
right.
we can work on moving that meeting maybe for a day or two after that.
Great, thanks.
One other item, Arthur, was the bylaws. We are incorporating all the comments, cleaning that up, and that'll be something that we'll review with you at the next meeting. And would like to try to get to a point where we can bring it back to the board to finalize those bylaws.
Excellent.
Okay, if we don't have anything else, we'll move on to new business, our action items. We have number 1, the PFM contract, staff overview.
Great, and I'm going to turn these over to Debbie, if it's all right, Debbie, and her cover these.
That is fine with me. My computer went to sleep, so I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I wrote the memo, so I should know. So just a kind of a quick update. I tried to put this in the memo just to give it some context, but the Port of Hood River has used PFM as their financial advisors for a number of years. I'm not even sure how far back the original contract goes. And that is why when there was the whole process of transferring contracts over to the Bridge Authority, we couldn't really do the PFM contract because they will continue to be the port's financial advisors. If the port chooses to go borrow money for some reason, they'll continue to use probably Duncan Brown out of the Portland office as our financial advisors. So what we need to do then is get a contract directly between the Bridge Authority and PFM. And it's important because but PFM as a financial advisor is heavily regulated, and there are disclosures and conversations and things like that that should occur directly between the municipal advisor and the client. And right now it's kind of going through the court. I mean, the mere fact that I am the finance director for both kind of makes it easier, but still the contract should be between PFM and the Bridge Authority. So PFM forwarded to me an engagement letter, which Mark Greeno has reviewed, and I think everybody is fine with the engagement letter. The question did come up about whether or not you need a contract directly with PFM. And Mark is still reviewing that to see if you actually need a contract, because the way the port approaches things is that we typically do a contract with someone like PFM, and then the engagement letter can be thought of as like work orders. It's like, we will have PFM do this project for us, or this piece of work for us. And we just, as we go through, we add those on. And so the engagement letter from PFM standpoint and possibly from Mark's standpoint can be a standalone contract, but whether or not we need an overarching contract is still up in the air. And that's why it kind of says legal review, or that you're approving this pending legal review. Mark's looked at the engagement letter and I think he's okay with that. But again, we may end up bringing a contract back to you. So I wanted you to have that background so that you're not confused by it. PFM has been working on this project. They have probably the most respected staff in the country as far as a project like this goes. So I have no qualms whatsoever in recommending that you approve this contract. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
This piece is specifically for the TIFIA, or is this more general?
They wrote it to be general enough that they can respond to other things. For example, I did ask them to actually look at the Hood River County, because it will be something that's very formal. And so I wanted PFM to take a look at the Hood River County agreement. So it allows them to provide overall municipal advisory services to you through the building of the bridge, basically.
And just to that, and I'll do this during the information meeting, just remember that. And we're gonna talk a little bit about some questions we got from WashDOT and reimbursement.
Okay.
That we'll need to talk about, and then we're working on the details of it. We'll bring it back to you, but it will come down to contracting and what we're asking people to do and what is reimbursable and what is not.
And Mark Greeno is on now, because those are the kinds of questions that probably your legal counsel will need to answer.
Yes.
To more so than your finance director.
And we'll be following up with them too. And I'll
Okay, perfect.
give everybody the high level overview of what we've heard, and that we're going to have to make some adjustments based on what we've heard.
Okay.
And we talked about just a little bit ago about federal procurement requirements.
Yes. That's part of it.
This as well.
Yes.
Yeah, the port can procure things a little differently than the Bridge Authority can, because of the federal oversight that's required for the Bridge Authority. Yes.
I don't know if you know the answer to this. We have had allocated some money for the TIFIA process, as mentioned. Are we about this comparable amount of work through that process that matches up roughly with the budget numbers?
Yes.
Yeah. And we asked them about the total that it's in line with where we're supposed to be too. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can somebody speak to the fixed price portion of the contract and sort of why that is in there and how that mechanism works?
Yeah, it gives me some comfort, because when you just do time and materials, if you think of it from like a contractor or something like that, where then it can get difficult to control the time, because none of us are experts in the area that they're dealing with. And so it's difficult to say, well, this should only take you 8 hours, or this should only take you 10, and yet you're billing us for 20, or something like that. And so by having it be a fixed price or a not to exceed price, we kind of avoid some of that of, if they end up spinning their wheels and spending more time on something, they end up eating that cost unless there's a valid reason why they come back to us to ask for additional money. If the scope changes, then it makes sense for them to come back and ask us a question or ask for additional money. But if not, they really should be staying within the parameters of where we expect them to be.
When I,
So
it is a not to exceed amount, because it looked like they were kind of billing us time and materials, and then there was a kicker for the fixed price amount. And then, which I think was kind of two questions. One was ensuring that, if they exceed the amount that's covered in the fixed price. And then, are we kind of back to the earlier point that we have scopes of work that we'll be sending them that are not specifically for TIFIA? Does that not to exceed amount also include that extra work, or are they going to be parsing that sort of thing out?
And actually, I believe Brad was on here earlier. Do we
I
have
don't think
somebody
anybody's on.
from PFM that might be able to answer that? I'm not sure if anybody's still on from PFM. But I do know that they wrote the engagement letter knowing that there would probably be some more small pieces. So I do believe that any small pieces will fall within this. But if we were to say change gears completely and say we don't want to do TIFIA, we want to go out and sell revenue bonds, that's a point at which they would come back and say, okay, we got to look at this engagement letter and rethink this and figure out what that would cost, as opposed to, because they know what the TIFIA process looks like and what it'll take to get it done. I mean, that's again, one of the reasons that I am totally comfortable recommending them is that they've done hundreds of TIFIA projects, so they understand the process. But if we came back and said, well, we want to sell revenue bonds, then they'd have to come back to us and say, is that easier or harder? What would that scope look like? So I believe that it is going to cover small things like the Hood River County. I mean, they are well aware when they put this engagement letter together, they were well aware that we were looking at interim financing. They know that we've submitted the OTIB, the Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank, that we've submitted that application. They're aware that Hood River County may be loaning the Bridge Authority money, that there may be some of these other interim things coming up. So they're well aware of that when they put the engagement letter together.
Any further questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move we approve the engagement letter with PFM pending legal review.
A second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we will move to our action item number 2, the Local Government Investment Pool LGIP account in the state of Oregon. Debbie, please take us away.
It's me again. So I got your Umpqua Bank checking account opened up, no problem. And then the information they sent me was not good on the money market. And so I asked them to go back and look at it again. And they still only came up with, and I'm trying to remember because I didn't write it down when he told me, but it was I believe it was 4.6%. The LGIP is currently returning 5.2% and has consistently beat the bank on any of these kinds of investments, especially given the dollar amount. Right now it's around 2.3 million and it's going to continue to grow. That's significant interest earnings that we'd be talking about. So I want to open a local government investment pool account for the Bridge Authority and put that money in there to earn the best interest. And it's basically, for anybody that doesn't know, so people like Grant deals with this all the time because the city has one, the county has one. It's basically just a big savings account, but they can earn good investment returns because they have billions of dollars to invest. And so they can invest it more aggressively than what any single local government can do. But yet it's relatively safe because they can be extremely diversified given the billions of dollars that they have to invest.
Debbie, doesn't the state treasurer oversee this?
Yes, you are correct.
And it's governed, there's specific legislation that governs what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
Yes, it's regulated by the state. Yes.
Move that we open an LGIP account.
Second,
I will second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you.
Sounds like a yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the tolling policy.
I suppose I'll talk about this one. So some time ago, the finance committee was tasked with evaluating high-level tolling policy and options regarding how to shape tolling policy for the future. Not necessarily the minutia or details regarding rates, particular that level of things, but just overall which methods we're going to use and a few other higher level things. That is attached. There are 11 items that we came up with on that list. They're charging tolls by vehicle axle, a flat rate, not demand pricing, using an all electronic tolling method or AET as opposed to having a manned toll booth. Operating expense categories based on revenue, we would prioritize how we pay those accounts according to those guidelines. We would copy the Port of Hood River's past due policy. We would, in our RFP for tolling, once we get to that point, we would include an option for interoperability equipment. So transponders from Oregon, Washington, elsewhere could work with our own process. Regarding exemptions to tolling, our guidance as a policy is to have as few as possible, as listed there. The executive director, once we get to that point of operations, may choose to waive tolls as currently exists in the port's policy, traffic evacuation, emergency situations, that sort of thing. Toll rates are reviewed annually during budgeting. No customer service front desk office, just operational thing. Stephanie worked that. And then payment method requires additional research, but as an overall policy, we would need to run actuarial tables to figure out which method we're going to move forward with. So those are the 11 points that we came up with.
Are there any questions or discussion with regards to that tolling policy?
There's no front office. What the recommendation is, or
In terms of how it's set up now, if we have, let's say we have a front office and some form of like a customer facing one, which side of the river do we put it on? How would that work with cash transactions and that sort of thing? So as far as a manned staffed one, no, that was the service level delivery option that we were looking at.
Okay.
So I think this is kind of a similar vein. If you've got all electronic tolling, what we know, there's a certain percentage of individuals in our community that look on a cash basis only. How does that impact them?
As currently exists with other AET processes, they can go online, look up their own information, plate, and then pay online. For people that don't even do that, there's also sending them paper copies of the mail as currently exists with the port and the DMV. So if somebody goes through and does it now and just blows through it or whatever, or that sort of thing, they get something in the mail saying, here's your toll, and we can choose to continue that process, or we can not. And that's one of the lower level tactical steps that we weren't tasked with doing at this step.
Okay. Well, I just worry there's a certain percentage of the population that just can't get online to pay. They can't pull out a card to get the sticker on or whatever. So how do you still make it a good amenity for them? So that's,
There are also companies that will set up like in, say, a 7-Eleven or those types of places and run this for you. They typically fund themselves by charging a service fee. So, you have to look again at the policy and what your overall, how you want to approach this. But there are companies that will also do that that some places use. That is actually a pretty big business now, is to be the cash operation for a toll facility. And then there's also contract services. If you wanted to contract with, say, the cities on each side or the port and a city over here or something like that, there's those options out there too.
It's just like what Bridgemart does for fishing licenses. So they go across the river into Washington. Everybody stops at the gas station there and gets their fishing license if they're from Oregon. So that same sort of arrangement could be created. So we weren't at that level yet. That's more tactical decision.
well, I think I understand the basis is you're trying to get it all online. You're trying not to have a customer service. It's trying to all occur in the background. And that's great for the bridge authority. I think we need to be cognizant that there is part of the population that probably doesn't work for, and just come up with a reasonable solution for that as we get closer. It's my only concern.
Commissioner Babbitts.
So, Grant, there's this whole set of issues that previously we were talking about as equity issues. And it sounds like you're subsuming that into the toll exemptions discussion. I just want to make sure we're a little more explicit about it. So at some point, will there be a broader board discussion of how we address the equity issues which we've raised previously?
Yeah, I would expect us to talk about the list of exemptions at some point. The broad policy at this point was just to create as few as possible, and some examples were listed below.
So I was contacted, for example, by transit groups asking if we are going to consider exemptions for public transit. And I said that they were premature in speaking with me. And so the question would be, when would it be appropriate for them to start speaking with us?
We have not set a time that we need to evaluate it down at that level yet. Kerry has his hand raised and may be able to give better light on when that could happen on the timeline. But we're not to that point yet, or haven't discussed it at that level yet.
Yeah, I think, I had given some advice a couple of months ago that we were, 18 months to 2 years away from having to make those difficult decisions. And I've revised my thinking on that, because very shortly, and I'm thinking within the next couple of months, we're going to have a contractor under or a consulting firm under contract to do an investment grade traffic and revenue study. And they are going to have to make certain assumptions in this traffic revenue study. And because it's investment grade, it's going to be what is used in our credit evaluation. They have to be a little bit more solid than just kind of hypothetical assumptions regarding toll rates, both now and in the future, and regarding discount programs or exemptions for tolls. And so I would say that the discussion that Commissioner Paulson is referencing is probably no more than a couple months away, and we're going to get you all teed up for that and have that discussion.
Sooner than we were planning, Arthur.
That's great. I just want us to be clear and consistent on it.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have within the next couple months now.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Further discussion.
Add it to the list of the finance things.
If there's no further discussion, would anyone like to make a motion?
Is there any exact emotions you're seeking?
Do it. Move to approve the attached polling policy framework.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I guess just the term,
Oh, go ahead, Dorothy.
the terminology. What was the terminology concerning the exemptions? Was it as few as possible, or what were the words that it uses?
Yes,
As few.
yes, as few as possible.
Few categories.
Yes, as few exempt categories as.
I'm feeling a little queasy because it makes it seem like we're not interested in the equity issues. But I don't think that's what you're saying. So
No,
I think I can live with this language. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's a better way to say it. So okay.
And Commissioner Babbitt's under exemptions. It has emergency response vehicles as well as transportation entities such as CAT, Mount Adams, school buses, etc.
As examples.
Yep.
as examples, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the exact list of exemptions yet to be determined. Again, I expect us to be having that discussion soon over the next 2 months now. Instead of later on, but okay. So yeah, next 2 months, we're gonna talk about that.
Fun.
Yep.
Okay. With that, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Motion carries. We will move on to the CDM Smith contract amendment. Staff overview.
So I'll start and then I'm gonna turn it over to Debbie. This was brought at the special session, but because we had not sent it out to everyone, we decided to bring it back, and there was also some questions and everybody wasn't there to be able to respond to them. So I'll let Debbie explain, or I can explain better what we're doing with this. But Debbie, you want to go ahead?
I'm happy to explain, and I apologize for missing that meeting because somehow or another it wasn't on. I knew about it, but somehow it wasn't on my calendar, and I totally missed that meeting. So I apologize for that. So CDM Smith did the planning level, I think they call it traffic and revenue study, and we've been blessed in a sense because Washington State actually paid for that. It was the Washington State Transportation Commission that paid for that, and we've gotten a lot of mileage out of it. So it's been a great benefit for us. But now that we're asking Kroll, the rating agency, for an indicative rating, they have a lot of questions because we are using that as some of the basis for saying, here's what we think our traffic is going to be, here's what we think our revenue is going to be. So we're using that as our basis. Kroll sent people out here and we all met with them and everything. And then they kind of changed gears on us and put two different people in charge of this process. So those two people are getting up to speed on this. And so we've had some good meetings with them, but they still have questions, and we need to continue to engage CDM Smith because we really need Tim Besh and his counterpart there to help us explain this. I mean, they're the experts. And so because we don't have a big full-blown contract, which hopefully we will soon, for a TNR, the investment grade TNR study, we're having to continue to do these small contracts. And I was really hopeful that the first small contract would take care of it. Unfortunately, we're kind of going through the process a second time. And so we need an amendment to the first contract, continue to allow CDM Smith to participate in these conversations.
When you say going through it a second time, they're digging deeper than they did the first time. So it's not a complete repeat of what we did.
Exactly.
They're asking additional questions that they're digging a little deeper into it. Like somebody turned, the first group was kind of a high level group, and now you've gotten into the detailed group, and they're asking some additional questions and getting into the rating more than I think we actually anticipated.
More than we anticipated for an indicative rating. And they're literally asking for new scenarios to be run. And we've pushed back a little bit on that as far as, how much time even that CDM Smith has to devote to this right now. And the fact that it is an indicative rating. And so it's not something that we're going to be able to use to, go shop around to the banks and say, here we have this rating. It's not that kind of rating. It just gets us into the TIFIA letter of intent. process. And so, but we need CDM Smith expertise for now.
So it's still for the same amount, 12,000. Their estimate on here was for 43 hours. That does include the meeting time, but also then some development time out of the meetings.
Yes.
So that's the request is for the 12,000. And then we are working, one of the things that's on the contract was we went back and forth on whether we could just go ahead and directly contract with them. I think we're still kind of trying to figure that out. So we'll have that by the next board meeting.
Well, and we're still working with the procurement rules to make sure that this is, because this one especially needs to be reimbursable. As PFM needs to be reimbursable from the grants. We have to make sure that the grant people are happy with what we're doing.
And then this is the same one we looked at last.
It is, and this is not repeated work. This is just work that's coming out of the future.
Yes.
And then we do know that we're gonna have to do something with them more in.
Absolutely have
future.
to.
Yes.
Is there any reason that we're not just doing that now?
Because we have to go through the procurement process. That's why we couldn't bring you the full contract. This is actually an amendment to a port contract.
Okay.
To get us to the
To
procurement.
get us so that we can get the procurement process complete and get them under a full contract.
Yeah, and it was actually a bridge authority contract.
That's right. I'm sorry.
It actually was. The ports never had a contract with CDM Smith, but this is just an amendment to that first contract.
Yeah, this is Mark Reno. The other reason is these are relatively small, discrete projects where we have them come in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The next contract that you'll be seeing will be $1 million contract, and there will be a lot of liability involved because ultimately, somebody's going to be lending money on the basis of that study. So we want to make sure that all of the risk management issues that are attendant to that contract are fully vetted by your team. And we have a form contract from CDM that we'll be working off. We just want to make sure that it's not, too favorable to them.
Yeah, investment grade TNRs are very risky. Nobody really wants to touch them. There's only a few people in the country that actually even do them. CDM Smith's probably one of the top or one of the top 2 or 3 that do them. A lot of liability that comes from it.
I understand we have to get this.
The procurement, we know that after our research that CDM Smith did a lot of work with the WSTS, Washington State Transportation Commission, which includes this project. So they became a justifiable sole source. And then we're gonna move forward for the next phase of their contract, which Mark mentioned that it's gonna be $1 million. But as for this one, it's just amendment for the immediate work. So the sole source justification memo will be prepared and submitted so that we can justify our actions to go with the CDM Smith, whether they are super good or not.
An expectation that I have with our contracts is when we go through it, if anybody we contract with changes staff or changes people working on our project, like when we go through and do the bigger ones, for example, the $1 million ones, I would hope that as we go through that process, after that contract's already issued or ready to go, if whoever we're working with decides to change people, that we do not have to go back and then redo that contract again.
No.
In the future.
No, that's correct. They can switch
Even these small provisions have changes in key personnel provisions, but there's a note, and obviously sometimes key personnel change, right? So, but there's a notice procedure and then a consultation procedure. We don't expect to have to completely redo the contract because of those.
The only time we have that is if you all, like, for example, the progressive design build, there were key people that in order to change it, the board actually has to approve it. But outside of that, we typically will look at it from a quality standpoint. And if they're of equal experience and knowledge, then we can switch them out.
Yeah. I don't think anybody likes to duplicate work.
No.
Well, it's something that We do a lot of the times if there is bringing those new staff members up to speed, it's done on,
They're down.
they're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty understood.
In that case, I move that we approve the CDM Smith contract with, or I'd say the recommendation of that 12 hours is not enough to get things done, that he comes back
43 hours for
43 hours.
12,000,
If
yeah.
that's not sufficient, that come back and given a meeting time.
For the addition, I meant.
Yeah.
Contract data that.
Yes.
No, well, motion to approve the attached amendment to the CDM Smith contract date February 28th, 2024.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, moving on to the informational items.
All right, so I'm gonna try to keep this somewhat short, but if there's questions, please, we can go back and hit them. The risk register we talked about, we're integrating ours with the progressive design builds to have a single risk register. The regular scheduled meeting on Veterans Day, there was some discussion at the last meeting on that. We did not find in the notes that we finalized that yes, we are or are not going to have that. There was some discussion about going ahead and having it, and we just wanted to confirm that that's where we landed. And that's just Veterans Day. Whether we were going to take that day off or not, we weren't sure on the cities and counties how many of you recognize that as a holiday.
I think we all recognize it. The port, the city and the county recognize Veterans Day.
Okay. So do we want to either reschedule?
I usually end up working.
Move that,
So
or just eliminate that meeting? The next one after that is the 22nd.
November 11th.
yes,
November 11th, yes.
I won't be here, so.
I suggest we skip it.
Okay. And then we have the same thing on December 23rd. Doing
I'd
2
skip
days
it
before
again.
Christmas.
That's not Christmas.
So, okay, do we want to try to,
One in person.
that'll put us one meeting in November, one meeting in December. Do we want to just monitor and see if we need another one?
Yeah.
That's what I would
Okay,
recommend.
perfect.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everyone's, do we need, I don't know that we need a motion for that, do we, or do we need a motion for that? Sorry.
No.
We're good, okay. Partnering workshop, that should have went out to all of the board members. It's May 22nd. It will be at the Best Western. So we just want to make sure everybody was aware of that. And then there is a risk register workshop in the morning on the 23rd. We did reduce down the number of people on that one. That meeting will actually be in Vancouver. So just so everyone's aware, but there will be virtual options for you to call in if you want to call in and just listen to the conversation. That is really not the full risk workshop that we'll do in December, but just kind of a joint session to go through our list, the PDB's list, make sure we've captured anything new, kind of a baseline list for risk. And then we will start after that one, start reporting out on the top 10 and using that as our project list. The meeting directives from last meeting, we included those in the packet. Any questions, I guess, on those? There was a number of items that were in that. Rather than go through every single one of them. Okay.
Not seeing.
The JTC tour we talked about, we will get more information as that starts to come together. Total revenue reports, Debbie, do you want to hit on that real quick? And do you remember off the top of your head what's the number?
I know it's 2.3 million. I don't remember the exact number, but it's 2.3 million. We're a little bit behind where I would expect us to be right now, but it's not going to impact the overall goal of having your money that you need for the debt service reserve. So I will keep an eye on that. It's a little bit frustrating with this indicative rating coming up and to say, well, ever since the toll increase went into effect, we either had weather or maintenance affecting our traffic numbers like every month. since September. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. So we are a little bit behind, but
It's a percentage, do you, how far behind we are?
oh, like 5% maybe. And again, this is way early on, so, you know, and hopefully I go back and forth with interest rates because there's a lot of times when it would be great if the interest rates would drop. But I will say that right now, with them staying up, that benefits this particular piece. Because you're getting 5.2% on it right now. And like I said, I'll just roll it over into your own LGIP account and it will continue to earn whatever the LGIP is paying. But as long as interest rates stay high, you know, you're going to earn that on it.
I do want to go back to the budget committee. Was there any questions on that? That is the official budget committee. We put the schedule in here. The meeting will be June 10th. This is a very tight, aggressive schedule, just so everyone knows, but we have to hit this schedule.
I don't anticipate a lot. Well, two things that I don't anticipate you getting a lot of response for budget committee. It's not like the aesthetics committee where you know you have something fun to look and talk about. And it's I know, and I've got Grant in here saying, what? I love budget committee. And the other thing is that, and Commissioner Fox is not here, he and I have discussions about budget committee because it's not always a great management tool, and especially for an agency like this and a project like this that's multi-year. It's not a great management tool, and it's something that's required by the state. So, so we're going to do it because we have to, but be aware that it's very much prescribed by the state, and that'll be dictating what we do.
Well, you really sold that well, Debbie.
Don't you just want to run out and join that?
I mean, it's like, I would have said, there's going to be a puppy there, and we have pizza.
We did have a comment from our budget committee that really wanted to make sure there were snacks. We just had our budget committee meeting for the port on Tuesday, and I think all 5 of them just said, by the way, are there going to be snacks? So we were sure to
the advertisement to say there will be snacks.
There will be cookies and fresh fruit or something along donuts. We'll have donuts and cookies and pop, or I don't know.
Nothing.
All right. And then one of the last ones was the Gorge Transit Link letter. I just want to make sure everybody had seen that. They were following the aesthetics committee and some of the comments about trams and trolleys and those things. And they called to ask if we would like to have something, you know, stating their position. So I said, yeah, if you do that, I think that would be helpful. So they did provide that to us, and it's in the letter. So if there's any questions on that, but that was where that came from and why they submitted that. So. All right. And then that's all for informational items.
Do you have any update to give on the upcoming action items, Mike?
I do not. So we can go down to back to the aesthetics committee if you would like.
Yeah, I just have one update. I should have done it at the beginning, and that's from the Board of County Commissioners in Klickitat County. I went in front of my seatmates to talk about the easements right away and the property on the Washington side where the bridge lands. And hopefully we will be able to get a letter together that will make an agreement where we will transfer the property, that parcel, to the bridge authority at such point as the bridge has the money available to begin construction. So that then we could just take the property as local match. So just wanted to give everyone that big update.
That's really great. That'll be a big benefit to the project. Yeah.
Okay, with that, we can move on to the Bridge Aesthetics Committee open house feedback.
Would it be possible to pull up the PowerPoint?
You got it.
Thanks, Brand.
You guys see it?
Yes, thank you. Eric, was there anything else that you wanted to share before I get started?
No, I think I shook it all up right there, so.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, thank you everyone for taking a moment just to hear what the public has to say about bridge aesthetics. Next slide. I think at this point, all of you are pretty aware of what we were trying to do with this round of outreach. But the main purpose of both the in-person event and the online event that we had was to gather feedback from the public on the recommendations or the things that we've been hearing from our Bridge Aesthetics Committee. And we wanted to just ground truth those with the community just to make sure that the things that we were talking about felt right. So that way we could move forward with confidence that the feedback that we were putting in the Bridge Aesthetics memo was something that the public agreed with. Next slide. And so Eric already gave you a quick overview of this, but we did have one in-person event in White Salmon on April 17th, and we had about 40 attendees. We also had several Bridge Aesthetics Committee members and several of you. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be there. We also had an online survey or an online open house. We did it both in English and Spanish. It was open for 2 weeks, and we had a total of 634 people participate and give us feedback, which equates to about 4,000 total comments. Next slide. We also had some general themes that came out of that feedback. I would say that overall we were really, I think, like pleasantly surprised that generally the public agrees with the things that we're hearing from the committee. So that's a win. And the other things that came up was that the public really made it clear that they are really proud of the beauty of the gorge. And so they are hoping for the bridge to be elegant and simple and to not overshadow the beauty of the surrounding area. Aesthetics or the way the bridge looks is really important to them, but we also received a ton of comments that just asked for us to think about materials and design considerations that help minimize costs and reduce long-term maintenance needs. Several comments spoke to just like, yeah, it's great if it's beautiful, but it needs to be functional. It needs to be safe. Also, one of our bridge themes, as you've heard already from Commissioner Wilson, is that the bridge theme that we've identified for the memo is natural elements. So earth, wind, water, and there was a ton of support for that theme, as well as just a lot of interest in the local geology of the gorge. We had hundreds of comments that spoke to just how important it is to tell the Native American perspective of the gorge and the surrounding area. And this is a unique area and it's a unique opportunity. So we just want to make sure that the bridge feels like it fits where it is. For every question that we asked, there were actually, for this particular question, it was a lot of like, do you agree with this theme? And also, do you have anything else you'd like to share? And so a lot of the feedback that you see here is from just open-ended comments. And everybody, for the most part, agrees that the theme of natural elements feels right. And so we had a little bit of a discussion earlier today on like, how does that actually get incorporated into the memo? It's not, it's really the bridge theme is there to help just inspire elements and like forms and colors and material types. It's not like necessarily a direction to cue it that like we have to have like imprints of mountains on the side of the bridge. So it's really just something for us to keep in mind as we make all the decisions moving forward with design. And I'll just ping it back to Commissioner Wilson and see if there's anything else you'd like to add related to the bridge theme.
One that I liked on this was 97%, but in my mind, that's just kind of overwhelming agreement by the public. So I think we're right on this. How that manifests itself from a concept or a theme into an actual built object that's where the secret sauce will be. So more to come on that.
True. And you can see on the screen that we had 62 people actually go out of their way to say that they think that Nichiwana or Big River would be a nice way to kind of honor this bridge theme. And that if we do anything related to mountains, that we need to make sure to not only recognize Mount Hood, but we definitely need to make sure to recognize Mount Adams. Next slide. Another functional goal that we have been discussing with the committee is this idea of one community. And so it's really a discussion of just, you know, like a bridge connects two places, but as you all are well aware, both sides of the river feel very interconnected and like one community. And so this, to me, feels like it's a conversation about like signage and delineation between the two states. And I think that the overarching takeaway for us is just that we did have several people say, you know, the communities are distinct and there are differences, but we do rely on each other and we do operate as one community. So especially for our tourists that are visiting from other locations, it might be nice to have some sort of signage, either on, you know, on the approaches or on the bridge that just lets people know that they are entering a new state. Next slide. Public space. This theme relates to some things that we've been discussing with the committee about how this is a new opportunity. People are very excited about the chance to kind of stand on the bridge and view the river and all the surrounding beauty, and yet it also needs to be functional. And so this idea of the fact that it is going to be a new community space that doesn't currently exist, the public came out and said, yeah, that seems nice, but we also really need to make sure that it's safe, first of all, that it's comfortable. And I think that we heard that specifically as it relates to like people standing on the bridge, looking at viewpoints and making sure that they're out of the flow of like cyclists and pedestrians. And there is an opportunity to create a sense of space or place with art and science. And I think that like one of the things that we've been just talking about is just like, we're already required to do interpretive signage. I'll get into that theme in a moment, but I think that that's one more opportunity for us to kind of incorporate into this public space concept. Shared use path railing. There's a lot of interest in having it be mostly transparent and provide some wind protection. I want to just call out that even though you see that there are things that are of highest priority and things that are lowest priority, we listed several different things, considerations that we've discussed either with the project team or with the committee. It doesn't mean that the public would be upset or they don't like the idea of having historic feel to the railing. It's just that it wasn't as important to them as having it be transparent and have some wind protection. And I think that I'll just add that the working group or the folks that are focused on that particular element is also thinking about just long-term maintenance and the fact that it is very windy in the gorge. And so the idea of like acrylics or plastic or glass, probably, we just need to talk about that more because it might not be the best choice for a bridge that gets blasted by the wind on a regular basis. Shared use or shared path surface. So this is an opportunity to create some delineation between modes. Obviously, safety is incredibly important here. But what we heard is that there is an interest in having a different or a difference in paving textures between bike lanes and walking or rolling surfaces. And that the pathway itself doesn't necessarily, of all of the priorities, having interactive art or decoration is of lesser importance. And we also heard some comments about that the surface really does need to be smooth on the pedestrian side, especially for wheelchair users. Next slide. Overlooks. Folks wanted to make sure that we are accommodating wheelchair users. And I think that that really just comes into height. We want to make sure that, you know, like it's safe, but that people can still see over the overlook. We have also heard that we want to have, again, transparent wind protection panels and to include some traffic noise reduction measures. And there was a suggestion here that maybe at one of the overlooks, it would be a good place for us to put the state line. The working group this afternoon talked about how that would probably fall around the center of the bridge. And so we're not sure how that plays out with an overlook. So I wanted to point that out. That's something that needs a little bit more discussion. And also with the transparent panels, we want to think about impacts to birds and insects as well. Traffic barrier. This one was a little anticlimactic. I am not surprised by that. It's a traffic barrier. People are just asking for it to be safe and comfortable, especially for people walking and biking. It needs to be functional, durable, and low cost. Lighting. This is something that we've spent a ton of time talking about with our Bridge Aesthetics Committee, and the public seems to agree that lighting should really emphasize keeping those who are on the bridge feeling safe, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like a decorative feature. So the comments we received supported having it mounted on a barrier or railing, not being on tall poles, and not spilling into the river. And there were a lot of folks that went out of their way to specifically mention the need to follow dark sky recommendations. Approaches. So this was kind of a surprise for me, at least. The community generally just feels like we should prioritize simplicity, limit distractions, and include some traffic calming measures. We heard that there is like an opportunity for some signs, either a monument or artwork that express the overall theme of natural elements for the bridge approach. But again, like keeping it simple. And I think there might be one more slide or two more. Roundabout. The questions focused on what should or could go in the center of a roundabout, and generally people feel like either native trees or locally sourced stone or even native shrubbery would be nice. And that people generally want to keep the roundabout simple, function, or focus on functionality and visibility. And then there has been some discussion around how having artwork in the middle of a roundabout can be distracting. So the public comments kind of tied in very nicely with that discussion. Interpretive signage. Folks, of all of the things that we can provide interpretive signage on, people are most interested in having signage about the geologic history and how the gorge was formed, as well as local or regional Native American history. And also, like, a part of that is not just speaking to that as though it was something that has happened in the past. Our Native communities have a rich history that continues to be very much a part of their everyday lives. And for this particular part of the bridge, we also recognize that there are additional Section 106 requirements. So this just lets us know what the public is interested in having signage on, but we will also be working with our team to make sure that we meet those Section 106 needs. Color, the most preferred options, it was green or none. Just use natural concrete color and or dark steel. Least preferred options were brown and tan. And we also heard some preference for blue because it's the color of the river. Texture was the last element that we asked for feedback on, and people would like to see natural flowing organic patterns. So this is something that, for example, could be incorporated into maybe like the pathways or even some of the concrete or the railings. And so of all of the patterns that we showed them examples for natural flowing pattern is what's preferred. And also people just generally want us to keep it simple, keep it plain, don't distract from the region's natural beauty. That is it. Are there any questions? And I've got Esme on, who was a part of reviewing all 4,000 comments. Thanks for all your time. And we will be presenting on all this feedback with the Bridge Aesthetics Committee this coming Wednesday at the meeting, and we'll be diving into some of those topics that I shared that might need a little bit more discussion.
Well done on the survey.
Thank you. Sounds like there's no questions, but you know where to go if you do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, let's move into the confirmation of directives from today.
Mike had to step away. I have one on my list that was to reschedule the governance committee meeting, but I do see that it was moved to that Friday, the 25th. So we'll need to make sure everyone has it on their calendars.
Friday, the 25th?
I mean, sorry, the 24th.
Okay.
Yep. So I do see it on Mike's and my calendar. So I just want to make sure other members also have it.
It's on my calendar also.
Okay.
Great.
So someone magically did that.
It's magical.
And Kelly, I'm not sure what's on my calendar. I can't see all of it. Do we need to send out a cancellation for Veterans Day and December 23rd?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll do both the cancellations for those meetings, and then you should also expect meeting invitations for the budget committee meetings and the special session, and then the one that's also June 10th. I did not have any others that I noted. Anyone else?
Any announcements from any board members or alternates?
Just a question. So the aesthetics committee, the meeting we're having on Wednesday, is that an in-person meeting?
It is a hybrid meeting. We made a decision to do it hybrid, so we'll be here in the office and then online.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? All right. I would just mention that our next meeting will be Monday, June 10th, 2024 from 2 to 4 there in the office. We do not have anything for executive session that I've seen. And with that, with the consent of the governed, I would happily adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.